All right, my English teacher friends, I got another treat for you today in this writing workshop. So, as many of you know, I use Oscar nominated short films to teach and shore up for my students how to manipulate my inverted thesis template to write introductory paragraphs for literary analysis. So, the inverted for literary analysis. For rhetorical analysis, we use my declarative model or my declarative paradigm exclusively for the purposes of rhetorical analysis. And instead of using Oscar nominated shorts, I like to use commercials because they're really pithy for all that ethos, pathos, logo stuff. So I call this one hammering home the thesis. We're going to practice writing introductory paragraphs for FRQ2, which is the rhetorical analysis on the AP Lang exam. But even if you're a general ed teacher doing rhetorical analysis, this is a perfect exercise. So the commercial that I selected is Mr. T's Snickers commercial, and it's a fantastic exercise if you ever want to have a discussion of what toxic masculinity is. So kind of a comical commercial, something from the 80s, early 90s, to see how far we've evolved over the last 30 years in terms of how we tread as a society. So it's a free commercial on YouTube. You can show it to the kids and have a little breakdown about it, little Socratic seminar, what's going on in it in terms of the semiotics and the ethos, the pathos, the logos, the color scheme, everything in it. It's all very rich. So one thing that I do with my students is this. I Bob Ross my instruction. Intros are hard for rhetorical analysis. They're really, really difficult. In fact, all of rhetorical analysis, every little nuanced piece of it is difficult because it's very, very separate, very different expository mode from literary analysis, which these guys have been doing since elementary school. So when they come to me as juniors and I hurl a rhetorical analysis at them, it's kind of like learning a foreign language in a whole different skill set, very complex skill set. So what I often do is I choose a commercial that they can't write about. So in my YouTube channel, if you want to go this route, you have many examples of this. So I have many writing workshops that feature commercials. So they're going to write about the Mr. T Snickers commercial, but so that they don't mock and mimic me too much, they don't like hold my hand too tightly, I'll choose a different commercial and say, all right, I'm going to show you how to manipulate and pull the strings of my declarative thesis template. Here's 4 introductions, and I write them all. And that's what Bob Ross does, right? You get to the proverbial canvas, you get to the proverbial easel and paint with your students. So while I'm using one commercial that is, might even be thematically similar, they're going to write about a second commercial just to cut down on the mimicry. So the question's this: how do I construct the introductory paragraph? As always, my students have 2 choices. They can declare or invert. And for those of you that are familiar with my work, you know that for literary analysis, I tell my guys to always invert. And for rhetorical analysis, I say always declare. And then for the other expository modes of synthesis, persuasion, argument, and research, it's a 50-50 coin flip. It's really contingent upon the phrasing of the prompt and how you want to structure your line of reasoning. And I have plenty of stuff in the YouTube channel to break that down. So if you take a look at FRQ2 on the AP Lang exam, I contend that implicitly there's 2 questions being asked in there. And again, I keep saying this. Those that are familiar with my work, like I'm a rock star or something at this stage of the game. I'm not. I know that. But I know a lot of you guys follow me on my YouTube channel. This is the same slide I have for literary analysis as well, for FRQ1 and FRQ2 for the AP Lit exam. These questions are at the heart of analysis for rhetorical analysis and literary analysis. So students have to answer both of these questions in order to get to a thesis. Question 1 is, what is the authorial intent? Question 2 is, how does the author construct meaning? So how do we do this? How are we going to shore this all up? So I roll film and we watched the Snickers Mr. T commercial. And on my board or on my wall in my classroom, I have this poster, and it's just a Velcro laminate poster. And every time we're introduced to a new rhetorical term or device, we add it to our wall. So we watch the commercial, and then I have my students find the 3 most salient, germane, relevant, pertinent rhetorical terms and devices that the Snickers company uses to construct that commercial. And we do this when we're doing speeches, when we're doing letters, whatever it is we're focusing on. And we have a conversation about why they're the most 3 important terms, devices. So the declarative works like this. You begin with your thesis. The inverted is you end with your thesis. Let me go back. So you begin with your thesis, you sprinkle in a little bit of context and background without being plot summative. You have some tier 2 level vocabulary because it is an academic task. So I want to see a good fair amount of your average run-of-the-mill SAT caliber words. That's what I mean by tier 2. Sentence constructs comes right from the heart of my Nuance Academy. I borrowed an idea from Strunk and White in their seminal text called Write It Right. And they make the assertion that there's 12 different ways to cobble together a single sentence. So you'll see my students manipulating their syntax in the hopes of achieving voice rhythm and flow. Instead of overusing like short, simple declaratives or independent clauses, you're going to see a nice flow, a nice suppleness to my students' writing. And it's exactly 4 sentences. So let's go back to our 2 questions. And as I already alluded to, my students are going to declare for rhetorical analysis. So let's bounce back. Here's how this works. They're going to start with the construction of meaning. And when you answer the question, how does the author construct meaning, whether rhetorical analysis or literary analysis, that's the thesis. So for rhetorical analysis, I want my students to lead with the most salient rhetorical term and or device. This takes 3 of the 4 sentences. What my students do last is they drop what is the authorial intent. So let's go back to this slide. In inverted, which we use for literary analysis, my students have 3 sentences of authorial intent, 1 sentence construction of meaning. Just the opposite for declarative thesis, for rhetorical analysis. It's always 3 plus 1, but it depends which question you're leading with. So how does the author construct meaning? 3 sentences. What is the authorial intent? 1 sentence. So that might be confusing. It's kind of ethereal and pie in the sky. So let's give some concrete examples of how my students manipulated the template. So you lead with the most salient, the most germane, the most pertinent, relevant, big rhetorical term and or device. So 3 sentences construction of meaning, 1 sentence authorial intent. So look how this works. We're going to focus on those sentence constructs and also focus on the tier 2. Dichotomizing stereotypical notions of masculinity alongside things that are feminine in nature and unmanly, Snicker goes the route of toxic masculinity to sell its product. So we focus on the dichotomy and the stereotype, right? The dichotomy between masculine and feminine. Starkly contrasting an emasculated male speedwalker to the uber-masculine brawn of Mr. T. So that's the dichotomy, juxtaposition, contrast, whatever you want to call it. The candy manufacturer is playing with the semantics of what it means to get some nuts. So by saying semantics, we're in diction. So we got dichotomy, we got diction. And again, my students always go for 3, sometimes they go 4 terms. Clearly targeting a hypermale audience, Snickers is suggesting that their product can make the meek into strong, tough guys. That's the ethos. So my students imply their lit terms most of the time, right? Unless they have to say it. But instead of saying ethos, pathos, logos, my guys will imply. Last sentence, authorial intent. The ethos of Mr. T as America's most ultimate stud bodes well in crafting such a message. So it's dichotomy. And then we got some ethos in here as well. And then what else did I talk about? I forgot here. I lost it. So the dichotomy, the ethos, and you just imply it. Oh, starkly contrasting. That's how it works. So always focus on the three. Note the vocab, words like dichotomizing, stereotypical, notions, masculinity, feminine, toxic masculinity, contrasting, uber masculine, brawn, right? So don't over semantics, like all really good vocab, don't overdo it, stay in the wheelhouse, but look at the flow and rhythm of the sentence constructs. I don't like it when my students parallel their sentence constructs unless they're in the conclusion of their syllogisms where they're dropping down their independent clauses to hammer the point. Or you can parallel when you're dropping your thesis, right? Declarative sentences, independent clauses. When you're dropping the hammer, when you're trying to be assertive and declare things. But in the intro, I like it to be nice and supple and fluid. So just like this. So let's take a look at student number 2. Sadly, the punchline of this advertisement denigrates homosexual men. So you're into the logos. The logic is simple. Eat Snickers and be a man. Don't eat Snickers and be perceived as weak and emasculated. In juxtaposing, so this is our second term, the toxic masculinity of Mr. T to an effeminate speedwalker, Snickers euphemistically suggests to its male audience to get some nuts and consume their manly product, right? So when you're talking about euphemisms, you're into diction. So we got the logos, we got the juxtaposition, we got the diction. Starkly contrasting the gender spheres of masculinity and femininity, Mars makes it clear that being anything less than a manly man is not to be desired. So you end with the authorial intent. 3, construction of meaning. 1, authorial intent. And my students typically, as I said earlier, focus on 3 of the most germane terms and or devices. This is tricky. It's really hard and it's unusual, but it's sophisticated. It's very elevated. And this is what I mean. You got to Bob Ross your instruction in order for this to work. So for my students are able to do this because I did a lot of writing with them. And one of the things I do is I do all my writing before class. I just put it in these nice little Canvas slides like you see here, and we go over them. And then sometimes if they're like, I need more, I'll be Johnny on the spot and just crank it off the top of my head in front of them, which is nerve-wracking, I know. And I know some teachers like that's a terrifying prospect, but you get good at it after a while. So I'm a big contender of the more good writing students see, the better are at executing it, and in turn, being able to grow and mature as a writer and do good writing. So here's student number 3. Again, it's going to be 3 plus 1. Mr. T, the embodiment of classic 1980s toxic masculinity, is the perfect lead character to sell a candy bar cloaked in an anti-gay message, right? So you're into ethos, and you kind of got a little bit of logos in there as well implied. The dichotomy is clear. Being an uber male is desired. Being effeminate is to be loathed and ridiculed. So logos, ethos. For whatever the reason, the mere act of eating a Snickers bar grants a man his nuts according to the logic of the advertisement. What it means to be a man is apparently contingent upon the candy bar he consumes, right? So very big concentration on the ethos and the logos here. And that last sentence into the authorial intent, what's the main message? What's the exigence? What's the universal truth for the advertisement? Vocab is up. I love the sentence constructs, even this first one, the stop, stutter. Mr. T, the embodiment of classic 1980s toxic masculinity, comma, is the perfect lead character to sell a candy bar cloaked in an anti-gay message. Good use of the parenthetical. Then, this is something you don't see a lot of, a colon, Pretty cool. Vocab is up, but in the kids' wheelhouse. They're not misusing words. They don't sound contrived. They don't sound pretentious. It's all in their wheelhouse. They stayed in their lane. Always 4 sentences, right? So every single time. So focus on the 3 and the 1. So hopefully you found that to be useful and can do a little crash course on how to get the thesis point for FRQ2 for the Lang exam, or if you're just doing, gen ed on-level courses and are dabbling in a little bit of rhetorical analysis, this is a great way to teach kids my template and to really shore up the fact that they got the not only the thesis point, but they're doing so with some pizzazz and flair, right? Going for the sophistication. So I've been inviting teachers to do this because I'm realizing as I do work with the National Writing Project that a lot of teachers are terrified to write in front of their kids. And so I'm offering this. If you want to try your hand at this, if you want to choose a commercial and show me your samples to make sure that you're good in the hood, you actually help me out too. So I can write along with you, and it gives me a lesson plan and gives you a lesson plan. So that's the beautiful reciprocity of teaching and sharing our content. So if you want these slides, you feel free to reach out at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. And then I mentioned NWP, the National Writing Project. I'm teamed up with them. All of my professional development going forward is going to be offered through them, which is great news because teachers can get their PD hours. NWP is accredited. And for your PD hours that you need for certification, or if you just feel like taking a course that's inexpensive and want to, grow and learn on your own, National Writing Project is phenomenal. So my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind is being offered through them for a credit badge of 10 hours, even though it's just a 5-hour course. We're meeting Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 5 consecutive weeks, and we're going to be offering that regularly throughout the academic year and during the summer. And then every month I have a special. So in the month of November, I'm doing my alternative grading methods 2-hour intensive. In December, I'm doing my teaching line of reasoning. And in January, I'm doing my Plato's Plato discussion modality. So every month we're doing a professional development, like a 2-hour professional development. So if you want more information on those PDs, check it out at www.teachinghowtowrite.com. And it's all on my webpage, and you can explore there. And if you have questions, by all means, reach out, drop me a line. So hope all is well. Happy teaching, happy writing.